As you get closer to retirement, there's certain things that you should be doing and thinking about. And the gears need to shift a little bit. And for a lot of you, you don't shift those gears until you're already in retirement. And it might be too late to do some of these things. So today I brought on Michael Barrichello from our team, who's one of our certified financial planners on our team here. He's based out of Ontario. And he's going to share some insight and personal experience around what you need to do as you lead up to retirement. Again, we build retirement plans day in, day out, and we see a lot of different things. But we want to make sure that you have success as you kind of run up to retirement. There's probably some adjustments that you need to make, and Michael will share those with us today.
So, Michael, thanks again for joining us here. So, we're going to cover five tips as you approach retirement. So, just five things you need to be thinking about. And we have one final tip for business owners at the end as well. So, stay tuned for that. So, Michael, let's jump into it.
Great. Thanks, Adam. And again, appreciate the opportunity to just share some points. So I think the first one is spousal RRSPs. We see a lot of clients, and then we still see a lot of spousal RRSPs where we're seeing funding going into the early 60s. And really to get full value out of those spousal RRSPs, I mean, that's the time period when we want to be withdrawing money out of those accounts, right? So I think what people have to remember is that using that time period for withdrawals, and again, there could be other factors that come into play. Maybe you're working longer than you wanted to, but again, use the personal RSP at that point in time. But the advantage is pulling that money out when the non-working spouse, let's just say, or the lower income earning spouse is making less money, and then therefore we can tax that money at a lower rate. And even if that money turns around and goes back into the personal RSP, like as a strategy, like you can do that. But again, just trying to be mindful of the spousal RSPs and the fact that really you need that kind of 3-year window, right, to stop contributing before you make the withdrawal. So again, I think the spousal RSPs is one that we see quite often not being maximized. The second would be TFSAs. So it's amazing still, or surprising, that a lot of individuals, a lot of Canadians believe that it's an account, right? They didn't realize you could have investments, that you could own stock, that you could buy mutual funds, right? So, that's the one thing is understand that your TFSA does not have to be a bank account sitting at the bank earning you nothing, right? So take advantage of the tax-free savings accounts. And the other is that for those that have lots of room, but they may have non-registered money, portfolios, big portfolios, money sitting in cash, right? Like bring that over, like use that TFSA. And if you happen to pull it out, then you can replenish it next year. If there's a stock that you love and you wish it was in your TFSA, well, consider transferring it in kind. It will trigger a disposition. So yeah, you'll have to pay the tax up front on it. But maybe you've got a couple dogs, and if you sell those, then you're offsetting, right? You've got some losses to go against your gains, but now you've moved all the future growth into your TFSA. So, consider that as well.
Yeah, and TFSAs are such a great tool as you're enter into retirement. Like it just creates so much tax flexibility. And that's why I would say, like, good to have a bit of a runway leading up to retirement to build that retirement plan so you can make those adjustments so that when you actually walk into retirement, your accounts are structured in a way that's beneficial for you. Like if all your money is in like non-reg and RSP, like there's less flexibility. So, make sure you're utilizing TFSA, and we have lots of videos on how to use it. So we'll link some of those below. But make sure you understand, like, what is a TFSA? What's my contribution? What can I invest in? How does this thing work? It's probably the most powerful tool, we have in Canada, and many of you are not using it.
Yeah, no, I would agree with you, Adam. And we just did a presentation last week, and basically almost every dollar these clients had was registered money. And because they have healthy salaries, making a car payment and things like that wasn't a big idea. Didn't matter too much because it's coming from salary, right? So everything is great. But when you're retired and now you want to buy that car, well, you're not going to want to take out 50 grand extra out of your RSP just to pay for a car. That's where having that TFSA to at least put a big down payment or maybe pay for the whole thing comes in handy. So we're not pulling out $100,000 to pay for a $50,000 vehicle, right? Because of tax. So yeah, there's that flexibility you talked about. One of the other items, and again, most of our clients are doing pension income splitting once they hit 65 or earlier if they've got defined benefit pension plans. But there's the sharing of CPP. So a lot of clients aren't aware that you can share your CPP benefits Essentially, there's a calculation from the time that you're married. So whatever CPP you've earned while you've been married, you can essentially split that 50-50. Again, doesn't always work out into a savings because of our income brackets, our tax brackets. Sometimes if you're in the same bracket, you're already pretty close if you're income splitting. So it may not make a big difference, but if there's a significant gap between what one spouse is bringing home and the other with Canada pension, you may want to consider that.
Yeah. And just a note there, if you do share that and your spouse or common law partner passes away, your CPP will go back to what it would have been on your own anyway. So it's not like it changes it down the road. It just goes back to what it was. So that's something important to note as well.
The other item is the demutualized shares. So again, having a bit of a history with Sun Life, we used to have clients all the time that had demutualized shares for Mutual Life, and now you've got Manulife, and I think Economical has joined that class. Clients have these shares. Some of them are very, very small. It can lead to a bit of an administrative nightmare when something happens to a spouse. So I'm only suggesting maybe take a look at where they fit in the grand scheme of your retirement, because if you've got a brokerage account already, maybe move them there. They're typically with a trust company that's charging you a decent fee. Sometimes I think the first 6 months to a year maybe is free, and then after that they start to charge you a fee for that service. But look at a brokerage account, determine if you even really want to keep them, and B, look at maybe a joint account or something, just to again make that administrative part a little bit easier, because it can be a bit of a nightmare if one spouse passes, trying to get those dealt with from past experience.
Yeah, we had a client, their mom passed away not long ago, and they're dealing with that now. So paper shares. So if you have any paper shares, period, like deal with that now, because her mom had paper shares, we're into the six figures, so substantial. It was 3 pieces of paper, and she has to now mail those in. So it's like it's going to take well over a year to kind of figure it all out and deal with it. There's obviously risk to mail in these shares if they get lost. So these are things you need to consider, like simplify your life to some extent with some of these, outside investments and things that you have.
No, great point. And that brings me to reminds me of a story from a couple of years back when I was, again, down in Windsor, where I started my career cross-border with Detroit. We had a lot of people that were working for US companies, and then they were getting US share certificates. And so now these people were passing away. Well, to have to cross the border every time to get a notary public stamp or something on a document. So just the time and the money and so just understand, I guess, what you do have and decide where that plays long term.
Well, one note there, just to jump in there, a tip from one of my clients the other day I met with, her dad's getting quite elderly. Her dad's actually a client of ours as well. But he gets Social Security in the States, and it gets paid to a US bank account. And if you do bank with Royal Bank by chance, Royal Bank actually has a US branch that you can get the deposits to and link it to your Canadian. So you can actually, it's an easy way, or else like for years, they had to actually go down there to the US bank, get the money. It's a bit of a process. So I know Royal Bank's done this, maybe others have as well. But with technology and whatnot, kind of that cross-border money flow issue, a lot of that can be alleviated nowadays. So look into that. If you kind of have a bit of a headache around that, that's something you can look into.
I guess the next one would be review your wills, your powers of attorney, right, and your beneficiary designations. So most of us, when our kids are really, really, really young, if we had them, we set up a will, and then we wait till they're maybe 15 or 18, and then maybe you revise it again. And then you don't really do it again until you retire. So now your kids are in their 30s or 40s, right? But meanwhile, your assets have doubled or tripled. So it's really important to make sure that your beneficiary designations are reviewed. How does that match with your will, right? So do you want everything to flow to the kids directly? Do you want to go to your estate and then go to the kids because you have a specific trust in mind, or you have different distributions that you want to create? So again, just trying to tie up some of those loose ends and paint that picture for you. And sometimes it's as easy as just drawing circles and squares, like the old flow charts we used to do in elementary school, and saying, where's the money going to go? How do I want it to flow now? Right. Yeah. And you may trust one of your children with money and maybe not the other. And so that's a discussion you have to have with your lawyer.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're actually going through that with a lot of our clients this year. So our ongoing kind of investment planning clients, we're doing estate planning reviews with. And yeah, some of those older wills, like things that are popping up constantly is does your executor actually know they're the executor? And if not, have that conversation, and does it need to change? And B, we all have a digital life now, like an online life, passwords, that kind of stuff. And a lot of that's not documented anywhere for many people. And so you want to make sure you document that somewhere, whether you're using like a master password program or just writing them down in a secure spot. And again, make sure your executor, your kids, whoever that is, knows where that's saved. Because again, going forward, if you do pass away, you want to make it as simple as possible. Being an executor is a very tough job, even with an easy will. So we want to, make sure to simplify that for that person.
No, great points, Adam. And again, I think we had a conversation a while back about the digital planning, right? So,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I think this leads me now to kind of our bonus tips or bonus discussion on business owners. So if you're in your 50s and you're a business owner, here's a couple of things, again, maybe to consider as you're approaching retirement. And again, I had a couple of these conversations just recently. So the whole dividend versus salary discussion, right? And so if your business is still actively making money, your accountant is likely still telling you to take a salary, which makes sense, RSP room, CPP contributions. But if that's been winding down or has wound down, typically we start to see more dividend income coming in and less salary. So again, have those discussions and also make sure that you're, having that discussion and including your advisor. So if your investment advisor or financial planner is thinking, hey, we're going to pull out the spousal loan or the spousal RSP money from 60 to 65, but yet the tax advisor thinks, well, no, I want to give large dividend distributions between 60 to 65. So, it's time to have those discussions and maybe start to get things that people on the same page. And also, what does it look like? What does retirement look like? Is it a succession plan? Is there family taking over, or is it a sale of assets, right? Is my active company now becoming a holding company? And what does that mean? And if that's the case, are you in Ontario or British Columbia where you're allowed to implement a secondary will strategy, right? So you can have a corporate will, because those assets are likely going to stay in the family if something happens, and save yourself, lots of money in probate, because typically those companies are a good part of somebody's estate value. So again, if you're in Ontario and BC and you've got a private company and you don't have a secondary will, or what we would call a corporate will in some cases, maybe have a discussion with your legal advisor around that if it's suitable for your situation. Yeah, and I think the last point again is really just having those discussions, right? So family, especially if family is going to take over the business, or whether you're farming or manufacturing, having the sooner that's kind of laid out, the sooner mom and dad and the next generation can have those discussions. And then also getting advisors, legal advisors, tax advisors, and your investment advisor, insurance advisors, all on the same page in terms of what does the next couple of years look like. So yeah. Some people like to be proactive and plan out. Others are more reactive and wait. So again, having those discussions early and often is the key.
And a lot of times transition, if you're selling your business, like there's things that need to be done 2, 3, 5 years in advance. Like there's structures that need to be set up. There's rules around it. There's a lot of tax advantageous opportunity there, but again, there has to be planning. So if you own a business, it doesn't matter what you plan to do with it at the end of your career, you want to start having that conversation with your team 5 to 10 years before you plan to transition out, because too often we see business owners kind of, I want to retire next year, but I don't know what I'm going to do with the business. Yeah. I think it's worth something. It's like, well, probably not anymore because you took too long kind of idea, right? So be proactive on that stuff. Perfect. Well, Michael, thank you so much for joining us in this video. We appreciate it. Always insightful. And we'll do this again soon.
Appreciate it, Adam. Thank you.